Guys, I'm Dr. Emmanuel, and I want to continue from where we stopped the last time in terms of our website design. So a quick recap: the last time we created these websites, as you can see on the screen, an Afro Farms website, and we created a header, we created the body, and in the body we created two sections. We added a button, and we have a footer which contains the copyright information. So in this video, I want to take it a step further and show you how to do some other things, such as using the ID, using the class to target specific elements in your HTML document. If time permits, I'll also show you how to add images and style your images. In this section, in this video, I'll also demonstrate how to place these sections side by side using the display flex. So let's get straight into it, because obviously it's easier to learn when you can see exactly what I'm saying. So let's move in. Let me put these sections. I'm going to put, the first thing I will do to target the sections and put them side by side is I'm going to put these sections inside a division, for instance. So I'm going to put a div there, and let me take this closing tag of the div there. So what I've done essentially is that I've wrapped both sections inside the division elements. That's essentially what I've done. I can actually wrap these sections inside another section element. So instead of using div, I can use another section and wrap that in. Well, let's use the division, and let's give this division a class. Okay. Before giving it, we're going to do that. Let's move and let's move into our CSS. So in our last video, we had an external CSS, which means a CSS that is separate from the HTML file within the same folder, as you can see there. HTML CSS, that's our JavaScript file. What I can do is, let me demonstrate internal CSS. So if I copy and cut, you notice that my website now shows only the HTML. If I go back into my HTML document and I move into the head section, so within the head section, I can put a style element. It has the opening and closing tags, and I can paste everything inside there. And you can see exactly what happens, exactly what we had the previous time appears. So I can do my CSS styling within my HTML document. That's called internal CSS, as compared to what we did the previous time, which is an external CSS. So let's stick to internal CSS. I hope it doesn't make us become confused. Maybe for the sake of this video, let's go back to external CSS, just so it doesn't create confusion. Now let's see what we can do. The first thing we want to do is to target our division. So the division in this case is like a container. The division is like a container that contains the two sections, because what I've done is I've wrapped the two sections within this container, within this element called division div. So once I target the division, any styling I give to that division would apply to both sections. So let's do that in our CSS. So if I go to my CSS and I just choose any point, let's put it close to section. So let's put division, div, curly bracket open, and let's what should we do? Let's say width. If I give it a width of 50%. No. If I give the sections, if I give each section a width of 50%, each section a width of 50%, let's open that. Let's take that back. So section width of 50%. 50% doesn't look 50%-ish here. Let me just go back into my CSS and see. So that's a section, that's a section. Goat farm. Yeah, it looks right. So that's a section. Let's go back and say section width 50%. I have a padding left, it's fine. I have a margin top, I have a border style. So section width 50%. If I come into the div, I can use the display feature, display attribute, and say display flex. No, I want to use flex. So display flex. You can see what display flex has done. So display flex, both sections are within the same container, which makes sense. Now display flex has put those sections side by side horizontally. You can always have this other display, so display block, for instance. If I say display inline, let's say display grid. I think it's grid that will do the other one. Right, okay. Let's say display flex. I want them to be side by side, horizontally. But then the next thing we can do is we can create a space between both of them. Let's put a space between the two of them. So what I can do is this is the first child of the section. This is the second child of the section. So there are two sections. This is the first child, the second child. Let's try this. If I say section and I use if I use the last child selector, so I can say section colon last child, and I put a margin left, a left margin. That should work, except if there is a disconnect. So left margin, and if I put 30 pixel, you see what happens. I'll explain. What happens is that this is section 1, this is one section, this is another section, this is the first child of the section, this is the second child of the sections, or the two sections. So I can let's try this. The other thing I can do is I can say section colon first child and put a margin right. Let's try that and see. So if I say section colon first child, okay, curly brackets, and if I say margin, because I want to push the first child, I want to create a space after the first child, between the first child and second child. So margin right, and if I say 30 pixel, that does the same thing. You can see. Another thing we could do is you can use the end child. So if we come here, let's assume maybe we have multiple. We can say end child. End child first. Okay, so we can use the end child selector, section colon end child. 1 means first child, so first child margin right 30 pixel. So there's a margin of 30 pixel beyond the border, beyond the right border of the first child of this section. That's what it means, beyond the border margin, between the text or content and the border padding. Okay, if you recall from our previous explanation, previous video. So you can use end child, or let's use first child. Let's not run too fast. So first child, because it's already first, we'll take out that number 1. So section first child margin right 30 pixel. Put a 30 pixel there. Now remember, we put padding there. So let's see if we can remove that padding. Let's go into the section and reduce that padding. Let's reduce it to 15%, for instance. We can even use pixel, let's say 20 pixel. 20 is not enough. We can say 50 pixel. 50 is not enough. We can say 70 pixel. We want to put it to the center. 80 pixel. 90 pixel. Yeah, 90 pixel looks fine. I think in our last video we tried some other things. We tried text align, And what text align did, if you watch the previous video, the text align pushed all the text to the center, text align center, but it left the dot and the numbers 1 and 2 on the left side. We also tried align items center, which didn't work. I'm not sure if we tried justify content center. That didn't work as well. So I had no choice than to be left doing left padding, to put that left padding to push everything towards the center. So 90 pixel, so width of 50%. So this is something we could do. Now let's try something else. Let's say we want those sections to change color once our mouse hovers, our cursor hovers over it. Now, if we want to do that for both sections, we'll target the section element in the CSS. So we can say, no, we actually need to use a selector. So we'll say section colon hover. Okay, we use the hover selector. What this means is when we hover over the section, what we want something to happen, and we can say that thing we want to happen is that the background color would change to, what color do we use? Background color will change to dark magenta. So if I hover, you can see what happens, dark magenta. That's not the best color, obviously, but this is just for demonstration purposes. So when I hover, dark magenta. How about we want this feature, this hover feature, to affect only one section, not both sections? That's where I'm going to introduce the concept of class and ID. Okay, class and ID help you target specific parts, specific elements, specific tags in your website design. So let me show you that. So let me take this out for a moment. If we go back into our HTML, we can give each section a class. So we can say class equals, let's call it section 1. Okay, and we can come here and say class equals section 2. You can see that as soon as I put my equal sign, it just puts the parentheses, it just puts the quotation marks for me, to type in the class. So your class or ID is written within the opening tag. If I create a space there, it's written within the opening tag of your element. In this case, is the section element. Section element, this is the closing tag of the first section element, and we've put our class inside. Instead of class, you can use ID. There's a subtle difference. You can also give it an ID if you want, but there's no need. It's no just waste of letters. So let's say class section 1, this other section class section 2. Okay. If we go into our CSS, let's say we want to make section 2, which is the goat farm section, turn blue when we hover over it. Now we come here, because we're using a class, we'll say dot section. If we were using an ID, it will be hash section. Now if you're just targeting a tag, like the section tag, the body tag, the header tag, the footer tag, you don't put any dot or hash. Okay, as you can see, this is the button tag. There's nothing like dot button. If we give that button tag or button element a class and want to target that class, and if we call that class button, we'll not say dot button. I'll explain, so I don't confuse you in the process. So let's say, because we're using a class, dot class, and I want the background color to change when I hover, so I'll use a selector, the hover selector. And how you introduce a selector is using your colon and hover. Okay, remember we used the selector in the first child section, first child, that was a selector. So hover. Now dot section, because this is a class, colon hover, which is my hover selector. Let's say background color, and let's use a blue color. Just something, is it something light blue, deep sky blue? So that's when we hover That's for dot section 1, section 2. Yeah, we have 2 sections here. So you can see that. You see what's happening? Section 2 changes to a deep sky blue color when I hover my mouse or my cursor. Section 1 does not. Okay, section 1 does not. Now let's say we want section 1 to have a different color. We'll say dot section, because that's a class we gave it, dot section 1, which is a class, and we'll use the same hover selector, but let's give it a different background color. What background color do we use? Let's use the blanched almond. You can see that when I hover over section 1 is blanched almond. When I hover over section 2 is deep sky blue. See that? But if I want the same hovering color change to apply, I don't need to use a class. I can just say section hover selector, and I'll just do my let me show you. So if I just say section and I use my hover selector and I say background color and I use chartreuse. If I comment these ones out, so what I can do so you can see it is I can comment it out. If I comment that out, okay, so what I've just done is I've converted these ones into a comment, which means they're not going to be read as codes or as design codes. So I've just commented them out. That's why you can see them inside these / asterisk */. Okay. You now see section : hover background color chartreuse, which is obviously a green color. It applies to both sections. You can see that it applies to both sections. Okay. That's something we can do. So this is how to comment a part of your CSS out using the forward asterisk at the top, and then at the closing part of the comments you use asterisk /. So this is something we can do. Now, how about we want our borders? If you look at the borders of our section, how about we want to curve the edges, those sharp corners, the edges, the 90-degree edges or corners. Let's curve them a bit. So if we go into section, we can use border radius. We can set the border radius, and let's say 4%. Let's see what 4% will be. You can see that corner has curved. Just to make it obvious, if I use 40%, you see what's going on. Okay, so that looks too much. So let's say 10%. You see that curve? You see the curve there? You can see the curve there. Okay, you can see the curve. So that's 10% curve. You can keep increasing it. 20% curve. It curves even more. You can see that. 50% will make it, very elliptical. Yeah. If it's an image, if you use 50% on an image to turn it into a circle, because this is a text, it's elliptical. So someone might say, oh, maybe I like this 50% border radius. I don't know. It could be appealing to some people, making it look like this. So that's what border radius will do. That is what your border radius will do. Okay. You might want to say when you hover, you want the color of the text to change. You can still do that. You can say when you hover, you want the color of the border to change. It's still possible. Section hover selector, you can come there and you can do this. You can say border color. Maybe you want the border color to turn black when you hover. You see that? Border color turns black, so you can do that when you hover. These are things you can play around with. You can see maybe when you hover, you want the border radius to be different. It will, let's say, border radius of 0. So when I hover, you can see that border radius of 0. When I hover, a border radius of 0. So these are things you can do. Okay? Those are things you can do. You can do things like that. What else should I demonstrate? Let me put an image. I think the last time we added an image of a goat. I think we did, if I'm not mistaken. Let me zoom in here. Let me get 2 images. Goat. Let me get an image of a goat. Just bear with me. Let's use that. Let me get the copy image link. Okay. I'm going to take this back to where it was. Let's put an image. Let's add an image of a goat. Where should we add that? After our section, after the division. Let's put it outside there. We can create another division. And let's put an image. So we'll use the img, the image element. So img image. Okay, it doesn't have an opening or closing. You can notice that as soon as I put an image, you notice that black spot that appeared there. Did you just notice that black spot? You see that? Now inside the image, you need to put the source of the image using the src attributes. So src source. Let's post that link there. You see the goats. You see the image is so large. It's so large, it's ridiculously large. Let's do a couple of things. So that's the image. If I go full screen there, so you see, oh, it doesn't matter, still large. If I reduce the font size, maybe it becomes easier to see. If I reduce the font size just temporarily, so you can see, you can appreciate what's going on. So you can see img image, src, which is source. You can see the URL of the image link. Now, other things we could do the width. We can reduce the width of these. We can say width equals, let's say 300. It has come down. You can even make it 100. Okay, if you want a small image, if you want a very small image, let's say 200. Yeah, let's say 200. Let's do that. You can see how that looks, 200. Now, if we go into our CSS, we can actually style these. We can style this image. Let's go in, let's zoom. Let me zoom in so it's bold. Now we already have an image. Yeah, we had an image previously, I remember. But let me take that out. Yeah, so let me take it out. So that's how the image looks. It's squared, it's a squared image. So obviously when you put the image in, it's squared. We said image. Where's my cursor? So we've said let the width be 200. Okay. Now a couple of things we could do. If we go back, say img image, we use our opening, we use that. We could change this image into a link. I'm not sure if we did that the last time. I think we did. Such that when I click on this image, it serves as a link, and that's what is called a linked image, or an image link. So we can make it clickable. Before we do that, let's design it. We can give it a border radius. let's give it a border radius of 10%, for instance. So yeah, give it that curve at the corners. Let's give it a margin at the top. So let's give it a margin at the top. So one thing we can do is we can do margin top. Remember, we can do margin top and then give it maybe 20 pixel, at the top, create that space at the top. That's something we could do. Or we can just use margin and then we can now define the margin. So it goes from the top, right, left, bottom, and left. So top, right, bottom, and left. So we'll set the margins. So the first one is margin top. Let's say 20 pixel. We'll create a space. Margin right, we don't want anything, so we'll put 0. Margin bottom, we don't want anything, so we put 0. And margin left, we want want some margin there, so we can say 10 pixel. Notice how it was shifting. We close that using our semicolon. So that's how we can define the margin of this image. So the first one is the top, then the right, then the bottom, then the left. That's what we've done there. Top, margin right, margin left, margin bottom, margin left. So we've put the margin there. Now the next thing we might want to do is let's make this a clickable, a hyperlinked image or an image link. If we go into our HTML document and go to our image, what we could do is we'll use the href. But first of all, we'll use an anchor element, anchor tags. So we'll take the anchor to the end there. So we'll use the anchor to put our href. So href is an attribute that is used to introduce URLs or links. So you put your equal sign. You can see what's happening. You can see that it moves from an arrow to a hand. You can click, it's now clickable. But let's put an actual link inside that href. So if we go back and let's copy this website that takes us to show all these codes. And let's put that in there as our URL. If we go back to an Afrofarm and we click on this image, it will take us to that website. So we've converted that image into a link. Okay, we can, as we did in our last video, we can make it open in a separate tab, and we use the target. We use the target attribute. So inside our image, have I duplicated that? Hold on. So href, yeah. So it's inside the href. So we'll say target. We'll use targets and we'll say blank. So if we click on it, it opens in a new tab. Okay, not within the self or parent tab. It opens within a new tab, not within the parent tab or self tab. So that's something we could do. That looks interesting, isn't it? It looks interesting. So this is something we could do. Obviously, another thing we could do is we might want to say when we hover over this image, we want something to happen. So hover. When we hover onto this image, we might want the border radius to be different. I want to give it maybe 30% border radius. See what happens. Yeah, the border radius increases when we hover over it. And there's so many other things you could do when you hover. You might want to upscale, you might want to increase the size of the image, you want to reduce the size of the image when you hover over it. We can put another image by the side. We can take this button into the footer, for instance, or we can put the back and next buttons inside the footers. Let's see. Let's do something. Let's make this our white background of the entire body looks a bit too dull. So if we go into our body, so body CSS, and we say background color. Now background color of the body, let's use something. Let's use this as, is it Azure or Azure? You notice that the background color has changed. It's not plain white again. To make it more obvious, let's use something obvious like blue. So you can see the background color has changed, the entire background color. Obviously, that's not a good color. So let's use the Azure or Azure. I'll need to double check how to pronounce that word. This one is bisque or bisky. We need to check Azure or Azure. So you can see that that's the background color of the body, of the entire body. Everything inside here is within the body. Remember, in your HTML, the heading, the header, the main, the footer, everything is within the body. So we're giving the background body this color. That looks better, isn't it? So these are things we've done. We can also go to this header. We can go to the header and do a header hover. So if we want that, we can do a header and then we use the hover selector. So colon hover, curly bracket. Now we say when we hover over our header, we want the background color to be different. What background color do we use now? Yeah, you might want to do that, you see? You might want to do that when you hover. It's obviously not realistic. You know, doesn't look too pleasant to have things changing, you know, everywhere you hover. But it's just for you to just to show you that you can actually do that. You can see when you hover, you want the width of your header to be 50%. So when you hover, you can see what happens when you hover. It becomes 50%, half the width. When you hover, 50% width. So you can do anything when you hover, you do that. You might say when you hover, you want the border radius to be set. You want the border radius to be 10%. So when you hover, the width goes to 50%. And you notice the curvatures are the border radius, you give it a border radius of 10% on hovering over the, you know, I'm just doing it for you to see things that you can obviously do, things that can be done. Okay, so these are things we could do. What else should we do while we are here? Whilst we are here, we could probably stop here for now. I've shown you, yes, I've not shown you how to use ID. I've shown you how to use class using a dot. Okay, so I've shown you how to use class. Where's did I do that? I did class. The dot section. Okay, yeah, they are there, but I commented them out. So I showed you how to use a class using dots. Let me show you how to use an ID. There's a subtle difference between a class and an ID. They do the same function, essentially, which means essentially they are used to target certain tags or elements within your HTML. But class, you can use the same class for multiple elements. So you can use the same class multiple times, numerous times in your HTML, but you can't use the same ID more than once. What will happen if you use the same ID more than once is that feature, that CSS design, or your JavaScript, if you want better, is how doing get elements by ID in JavaScript. What's going to happen is that your code, your CSS or JavaScript effects will only apply to the elements, the first element that has that ID. Every other element that you've given that ID to will not be affected, or will not take up that effect. So that will be a waste of time. So class is used to target several parts of your HTML using one class, but you can't use one ID more than once. Let me show you ID. Let's give our header an ID. Let's give our header an ID of, no, what have I done? Sorry. Let's give it an ID of, let's call it heads, or let's call it head. No, let's call it heads, because we have a head, just so we don't confuse ourselves. Let's call it ID of heads. Okay, let's give it heads. So header ID equals heads. Let me show you how to reference, how to use an ID in your CSS. Now we have header there. Okay, if we take that header out and put heads, nothing happens. But once we put our hash there, hash heads, you can see that everything, the same styling we had previously, is there. So that's what an ID does. ID, you use the hash first, hash and the ID, whatever you give the ID is hash ID. If you give it, so that's that. If you want to go back to the header, you can even give it a class as well. You can say class heads. Okay, same thing. You can say ID heads, class heads. If we move back there and we take that out and we put a plus, a dot, everything comes back. The same styling comes back. So dot, because we've given that header, of course, a class of heads. So dot heads will give us that feature. We gave it an ID as well. So you can give ID and class inside your tag. It's possible, it's doable. Is it necessary? Maybe sometimes it could be necessary to use ID and class within, yeah. Just in case you've used the ID somewhere else and you're not sure. Maybe I've used ID somewhere else and I want that effect to surely happen. You can give it a class as well. So ID class, so that's how we do it. So dot heads is for class, hash heads is ID. If we want to use just the element tag, header. Okay, so that's it. So just for you to begin to appreciate different ways to play around the same thing, different ways to achieving the same thing, the different routes you can follow, different routes. If it's American English, different routes or routes you can go through towards achieving the same thing. So this is our image. Let's see if we can add a second image. Let's add an image of a fish. Let me zoom in. Fish. Let's get an image of a fish. Let's use this pretty one. It's a pretty fish. Let's copy image link. That's a gorgeous fish, isn't it? Let's go back there. Let's put another image. So we created a div. So if I do my Control Enter, I'll have a new space. If I have my image and I put the source of my image equal sign and I put my link, the link to my image, you can see how big that image is. So we need to give it a size. We need to size the image. Okay, same thing we did previously. Let's reduce, let's zoom in, let's zoom out to make it smaller so you can just see it. So image, we've done the src, the source of the image. In the previous image we used the width of 200. Let's do the same there. If I say width equals 200. Let's go back. we go back, you can see the image, the fish has an image of that. You can see because both of them are images, the same hovering effect applies. When I hover, the border radius changes, okay, because that's the image on CSS. Now to make this fish into an image link or a hyperlinked image, I'll do the same thing using the anchor and href. So I'll use my A, which is anchor. So I need to push my closing anchor tag to the end of this line. I put that there. Okay, here's my width. My width is 200. As soon as I moved my anchor, something happened to the size of the fish. Notice that the fish became smaller, so I have to look through. I have to look through if I take that. So something, so my anchor, that shouldn't happen. It's quite strange. So all I've done is move my anchor to the end, and it's just pushed to the fish, reduce the fish size. So to make it a clickable link, I'll do the href equals, is now clickable. Now if I go back there to the fish, if I open that, and let me get the link to this particular page. Okay, and I put that link in there. If I click on the fish, it takes me to that page. Now I want it to open in a separate tab. I'll use the same thing, the target. You can see the target I used last time, target blank. So I'll do the same thing in there. I'll put a target. I'll choose blank. So if I click on the fish, it takes me to that link, to that URL, but this time around it does that on a separate tab. It does that on a separate tab, not within the parent or self tab. So this thing actually caught my fish. And I think that's because of this submit button. Maybe if I push, could be because of the submit button that's sitting right there. I suspect it's the submit button. Okay. So where's our button? So it has let's move our button to, let me say, justify content, and doesn't move it to the end. Align item, and doesn't move it to the end. If I increase the left margin to 80, so if I push it this way, put it 90 and push it to the end there, usually even without using this margin left or left margin, I should be able to use a justify content end or align item end to push that button to the end. So my fish, even after I have moved my button away, the fish doesn't take up its previous size. In that case, what I can do, let's see if I increase the fish size to 300. No, because even the width increases. Yeah, so that's the width. So the width is 200, yeah? So what I can do is I can increase the height to maybe 250. Let's see what 250 height will do. No, that's too much. So I can say 210. 205. nearly about, so what I've just done is I've just used height to increase the height of the fish. Okay, so this is something we could do, obviously. Another thing we could do is we can even bring another image there. Okay, we can bring an image there. We can put, let's try putting a section. Let's try putting a section with a text there. Let's do that before we end the video. Let's try that. So within this division, we have an image. We have an image. Let's put a text. Let's put a section there. You can see it has appeared, this section, because of the features, the styling features we have in this section there. It's appeared there as a section. And in that section, we want to put a paragraph. Oh, you might not want to use a section. Let's just use let's just put a paragraph there. Let's just put a paragraph there. Let's write something. See how beautiful are these images. Okay. You can even put a division there. Let's put a division there. So you can see how you can nest. It's called nesting when you put things within something. So obviously there's a parent element. Inside that parent, you can put a child element. Inside that child, you can put a grandchild element. Inside that grandchild, you can put a great grandchild element. So you can nest stuffs within the other. So it's called nesting. You know, this is like a, if you look there now, this is like a parent. This is a child. That's a grandchild, that's a great grandchild. You see, so you're nesting things within. So you can see this is a division, and I'm trying to nest a division within a division. So that makes it's doable. Just so you understand, it's doable to nest. And I want to put a division there inside. So I want to put a container inside a bigger container. Imagine it this way: you buy several sizes of cups or different sizes of bowls, and you usually come as a set. There's the largest bowl, there's the intermediates, there's a small, there's a very small one. So that's how it is inside one another. So let's put a division there, and inside that division, let's create a list. So it's something, let's create an ordered list there. Let's put a paragraph first. Here is a list of, see there? Here is a list of miscellaneous items, miscellaneous farm items. Yeah, here's a list of miscellaneous, spelled that wrongly, miscellaneous farm items. And then let's put an ordered list OL, and let's use the list LI. Okay. Let's use the list LI. We'll use the anchor, or we could just use the list. The anchor is if you want to obviously put a link. So we can just say list, and inside the list we might want to use a paragraph. I want to make it a paragraph, small text. So we can say we might even remove the paragraph. What item do you want? What other items? So we have goats, fish, let's say chicken, bobs, if there's anything specific bulbs for chicken bulbs. Create another list. I'll give you number 2. You can see that. So number 1, number 2. Chicken egg retriever. I think I spelled that wrongly. Retriever should be IE. Chicken egg retriever. Let's just, you know what I mean? Let's create another one. Number 3, using the lists. Let's say fish feeds. So we've created a section there, but let's see how we can make those sections fit. If we give this division, so this division that houses everything, this division that houses the 2 images and this third division, this other division, we can give it a class. We can call it top div. We can call it anything. You can call the class anything. You can call it, let's call it top div. Okay, or main div. Let's call it top div. I will say main div, main division. Let's call it main div. Now let's go into our CSS and see what we can do to this main div. Because it's a class, we'll say dot main div. Let's say display flex. It's already a flex display, horizontally aligned. So we could do that. We could say okay, what we could do now, we can say dot main div, then we'll put a space and say div. I'll tell you what I'm trying to do now. Now what I'm trying to do is within this main div, so this outer container div, I've given it a class of main div. Now within that outer container div, within it there's a div. Now I want to target that div. That's essentially what I've done. So dot main div, I've put a space div. So you can do dot main div, you can do image img inside it. So I want to target the div specifically within that dot main div class, that container class. I want to target the div within it. I can then say text align justify. Let me see. So I think I made a mistake somewhere. Did I? No, I didn't. I put a paragraph. What I can, let me do a heading. Let me put a H6 heading and see. A H6. Yeah. So it's a heading, which means it should be on top. Why isn't it on top? You understand what I'm trying to do? These lists should be under. So this is the heading. Here is a list of miscellaneous farm items. Is my H6 heading there. Now the lists should go underneath. So let me see what's, so div. So if I say display, shouldn't be a display. Justify content. If I say center, that shouldn't do anything. If I say position relative, Position relative doesn't, oops, position relative doesn't work. Definitely absolute wouldn't work. So it's not a position, it's not position definitely that we use, that will work there. If I, it's probably the submit margin. Let me see if I can reduce that submit margin. Where's my button? So button margin top. Well, there's really no margin, not a lot of margin at the top. It's not. It's definitely not what's causing it. If I increase the margin at the top to 20%, let's see, it's definitely not the margin that is causing it. For the margin, let's use pixel. Let's use pixel. This is 30 pixel. Push it down a bit. And for the margin left, let's use pixel. 200 pixel, 500 pixel, 510 pixel, 540 pixel, 570 pixel, 580 pixel, 590 pixel. Let's do 600 pixel. Takes it back there. Let's use pixel. 600 pixel places it there. So you can see what exactly what I've done. I've put a I've put that there, but it's not well aligned. Let me give it a border. So my div, I can come in there. Let's give it a border first. Let's give it a border. If I say border, I can say red. So this is what I've done. I can give it a black border. So I've given it a black border. I've written some features within the border attribute. So I'm giving it a border that is black, that is 2 pixel in terms of thickness, that is dashed. You can always use dotted. You can use dotted. Okay, that's what I've done. You can use dotted, you can use dashed, you can use solid. Is solid? Solid. You can always make it solid. Okay, you can do a solid border. So that's still not doing what I want it to do. If I take that out, you can see it there, but obviously I want to have a border. I want to have that. Oops, what did I do? So I want to have that as a border, as a heading. Now under my div, let me see. Justify contents. Try that. Display. Okay, so display grid works, at least not perfectly, but you can see what I was trying to achieve. So inside the main div container, then the div within it, I've put the display as grid. Okay, if I do display flex, obviously everything will be horizontally aligned. So display grid vertically aligns it. So we have the heading there. Here's a list of miscellaneous farm items, and we can see the lists below. If we want to create some space between these, so this div, we can always say margin. So we can do margin, and we can determine what margin we want all around. Margin top, let's say 20 pixel. Margin top, we can do that. So we can leave it this way, or we can go further to say margin right, maybe 10 pixel. Margin right. Margin bottom, we can say 0. Let's see what 0 does. Yeah. Or we can say margin left, maybe 5 pixel, or 10 pixel. We can use this, we can close that. So we can do that. Okay, we can use margins to now create those spaces we want around. So this looks reasonable. So what we've achieved, we've actually touched a couple of things in our HTML and CSS styling. So what we've done today is obviously we've done some hovering effects. We've also done the border radius. We've also done that just to play around it. You see the images. We've made our images we've turned our images into links. We added this division, this ordered list within a division. We already gave it a border. We were able to move around our submit button, obviously by using the padding. Yep. So these are a couple of things we could do. Let's do this division. So something we could do here is, let's try it this way. We say dot main div, and then we use the hover. Okay, we use the hover. We can say background color. We want the background color to be bisque, so you can see that. Okay, we've used the hover selector, so that's the background color of this. When we hover over it is that. Okay, that's something we could do. We can even give this one a background color, so even before we've hovered, it has a color. What color will be befitting? Dark sea green. Yeah, that doesn't look bad. Dark sea green. So we've given it a color, and we've also given it a color to say what will happen when we hover. So we could do that. So this is something else we could always do, just to play around it, for you to see things that are possible. We can also do the same for the footer. We can even put buttons within our footer. I think let's end the video here. Subsequently, we'll keep playing around. We'll keep building on this this same website. We're not going to change it. We'll keep using this one, and we'll keep taking it steps and steps and steps further to see exactly what we can do within our limits. So within our limits. So thank you for watching and following to this point. I hope you've been excited, fascinated by the things we've done. If you haven't subscribed, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to like this video because it communicates to the YouTube algorithm or code that this video has been helpful, and then obviously YouTube would push this video onto the screens of other YouTube users. Thank you once again. I'll see you in the next one.